والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيبي وحبيب إله العالمين طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الهاديين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
قال الله العلي العظيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم فإن تولوا فقل حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
In the beginning, I would like to offer my congratulations to the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
And also to the Muslims at large and to humanity also for the birth occasion of this great man, great personality, the Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
And also before I proceed, I couldn't help myself not to thank all these performances that I've seen and heard. Really, it's really encouraging to see our youth giving this kind of presentation about the Prophet. To me, personally speaking, if it shows something, it shows that this community has a good future. Because if you want to see a future of a nation, look at the youth. Because they will be the future of tomorrow. So if they are good and learning, MashaAllah, there is an indication that there is a good future.
Alhamdulillah.
So Alhamdulillah to the community at large and to the parents and those who are really contributing in educating these youth, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you in this cause, inshallah.
Ameen.
And we hope that inshallah next year birth of the Prophet will be even better than this, inshallah. And if you allowed me and you agree with me, and Allah salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The ayah I just read is in Surah At-Tawbah. You know, in the Quran, there is the first ayah in the Quran which is known in Surah Al-Alaq, started with the Surah Iqra. That is the first ayah in the Quran. Now, according to some of the commentators of the Quran, they also believe that this ayah is the last ayah was revealed upon the Prophet. Meaning before the Prophet departed this world, the last ayah he received from Jibreel and never received any ayah is this ayah. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَقُلْ حَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ وَهُوَ رَبُّ الْعَرْشِ الْعَظِيمِ. So some of the Mufassirin, they believe that this is the last ayah the Prophet received before he departed this world. But this ayah, what makes it so unique is that this ayah comes to describe who the Prophet is. And this description coming from whom? Not a man who knows the Prophet. No, Allah who created the Prophet. To tell us who the Prophet is and how did he live his life. And I just want to share some light on some of these points that the Quran mentioned. And then end off with some of the messages for us. And especially for myself. Because to me, every year we sit down to talk about the birth of Imam or the Prophet, it should be an education for us to learn something where we can use it throughout the year and taking a lesson and the message from them to better ourselves. In other words, every birthday should be a lesson for the year for me to implement, because when I say somebody is a role model, meaning I'm trying to become like them. How do I become like them? By doing what they did and living as they lived. That's what the role model is. So when the Quran presented some of these teachers of the Prophet, how he lived, I hope that inshallah we will all take that message home, and not just take it home, also practice it as the Prophet did to become who he was, inshallah. Now in that line, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this Prophet. He said, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ. Indeed, a messenger came to you. The first lesson I want to share with you and myself is that it's very and extremely important for us to learn and know some of the names of this Prophet. Some of the names Quran gave him. Let me share with you some of them. Number one of the names that Quran gave to the Prophet is that the name Rasul. When you go to the Quran, so many places Allah, when he was to talk to him, he always refer him to Rasul. And one of these things that we can learn from the Quran, and also we should also practice as well among ourselves, is to learn not to call the Prophet by his name, which Quran never did that. When you go to the Quran, you see Allah have called so many prophets. One of them is Isa alayhi salam. It's in the Quran, Ya Isa, a'anta qulta linnas ittakhiduni wa ummi ilahin. Allah called Ya Isa. You come to Musa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called him by name. Ya Musa, ikhla'na alayka innaka bilwadi al-muqaddas tuwa. Most of the Prophet in the Quran, when Allah calls them, he calls them by their name, except Rasulullah. You can never find a place in the Quran Allah say Ya Muhammad. No, there's no such thing. Ya Nuh, ihbit bisalam, is there in the Quran. Ya Ibrahim is there in the Quran. But always when Allah wants to address the Prophet, Ya ayyuhan nabi, Ya ayyuhan rasul, with the respect, because the Prophet is not like any other human being.
Subhanallah.
That is one of the lessons that the Quran always gives him, the title Ar-Rasul and Nabi. That is one of these names. Another name of the Prophet in the Quran is the name Al-Bashir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the names of the Prophet, Al-Bashir. Al-Bashir means what? The one who always gives a good news. That's one of his names in the Quran. Another name of the Prophet in the Quran is the word An-Nadhir, a warner, advisor, telling people what will happen to them if they didn't listen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is one of his names. Another name of the Prophet in the Quran is the name As-Siraj. As-Siraj means a nur, a light. Because the Prophet is nur, Siraj. When you look at the life of the people before Islam, it was darkness. He was the one who brought the light. That people started to know what is right and wrong. Just to know about why the Prophet is called As-Siraj, go back and read the history when Ja'far was telling Al-Najashi about the life before Islam and how people used to live in completely darkness. That is why Allah called him As-Siraj. One of his names also in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala named him also is Al-Mukhtar, the chosen one. That is one of his names. One of his name Al-Mustafa. One of his name Habibullah. One of his name Al-Hashir. Allahu Akbar. And every one of those names comes to describe Rasulullah in one way or another. When we say Al-Jami' means the one who gathers everyone. And that is one of the akhlaq of the Prophet. At the time of the Prophet, he doesn't discriminate anybody. Everybody is welcome to the Prophet. At the time of the Prophet, you see people with all different kind of nationalities. They all surrounded around the Prophet. That is one of his name, Al-Hashir, Al-Jami'. Means he gathers everyone. That is Rasulullah. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He names Him, so many names, but they all have different meanings. It's very important sometimes we learn those names and see what Allah describes Him. So Allah describes Him here, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ. And the Rasul that comes in this ayah is absolutely amazing. In some of the ayahs, Allah calls Ar-Rasul. Ya ayyuhar Rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik. That ayah, Rasul, as alif wal lam, but here there's no alif wal lam. Why is the difference? Sometimes alif wal lam, Ya ayyuhar Rasul, Ya ayyuhan Nabi. But here, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. There's no alif wal lam. The reason they say in Arabic, when you put alif lam on a noun, it's called definite. If you take it indefinite, right? But when it comes without alif or lam, it comes to serve a purpose. What's the purpose? One of the purpose is called a ta'zeem, to show the greatness of that person. If I said Ja'a Rasul, a prophet came, the prophet came, right? But I can say Ja'a Rasulun, a prophet came. But here I know the prophet, but I still say a prophet to tell you no matter how you know that prophet, you're still ignorant about him.
Wow.
And that is what Allah is telling us. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ. Rasulullah is among us. We know him. Right? He's a prophet, he's a messenger. But no matter how much we think we know him, we are ignorant about him more than ever before. And that is why he himself, when he talks to Imam Ali, says, Ya Ali, ma arafani illallah wa ant. Wa ma arafaka illallah wa ant. So Ya Ali, nobody knows him. Nobody knows me except Allah and you. Because the Prophet, no matter how much you think you know him, wallah, you don't know him. The one who knows him is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why today when you hear some people, they describe Rasulullah in one way or another, absolutely it is an indication that they don't know the Prophet. How can somebody describe the Prophet, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, and I quote, these are their words, not our words. They say the Prophet is like an envelope. He brought a message. All what matters is the message, not him. Do you think the person knows the Prophet? Huh? And now you come to the Quran. Allah, the one who knows the Prophet, when he describes him in the same surah, in the same ayah as we talk about, Allah is the one who calls himself Ar-Rahim. Bismillahir Rahman Ar-Rahim. Allah never anywhere in the Quran described a being with one of those sifr, with one of those attributes, but the Prophet. His attribute that he gave to himself, he looks among the entire creature, nobody deserves among the human being to be Ar-Rahim, to be Ar-Ra'uf, except Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is Allah who knows it. That's how he describes him in the Quran. Allah says, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ, and then he said, مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. In the Quran, Allah talks min anfusikum and sometimes minkum. Most of the Prophet in the Quran, when Allah describes them and their people, he said, a prophet came among you. But the Prophet here, when Allah talks, he doesn't say, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِنْكُمْ. He said, no, min anfusikum. See, an-nafs is one thing, minkum is one thing. And let me give you an example of what Sayyid Sistan is saying. You know, a lot of scholars, when they talk about the unity among the Muslims, they said that our Sunni brothers are our brothers. Right? That's what they say, some of the scholars. But Sayyid Sistani, when he made the statement, he said, no, they are not just the brothers, they are from us. Meaning, they are one, we are one with them. Right? So here when you look, the Quran gives something similar to that. In some cases, Allah says, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِنْكُمْ. But here says, مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ, meaning from one soul, Allah brought you a man called Rasulullah. It's from you. What does it mean, أنفُسِكُمْ? Meaning he knows your problems and he knows what you feel and he feels what you feel. That's from you. So he feels everything that you feel. He also compassionate for everything that you are in. That's why Allah said, min anfusikum. And then he said, Azizun alayhi ma anittum. Allahu Akbar. Allah talks about the leadership that we have as Rasulullah. That this leader is not like any other leader. Every leader that you can ever find, they might love their people, they might love their tribe, they might love their community, but at some point, they are selfish for themselves and their families. But Rasulullah is not like that. According to the Quran, he said, Ma anittum harisun alaykum. He said, and anytime you are unhappy, Rasulullah is unhappy for you as well. Anytime you are happy, he says he's happy for you as well. Allahu Akbar. Which kind of leader can you find to that extent? He is happy when every person is happy, and he is unhappy when every person is unhappy. And doesn't matter Muslim or non-Muslim, because the Prophet is not just for Muslims. The Prophet was sent for all humanity. That's why Allah said, Rahmatan lil alameen. Not just him, not just humans, even animals also, they share the mercy that the Prophet brought us. For the Prophet is not for just humans, for everybody. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam feels. That is why Quran talks about him. He said, لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا يَكُونُ مُؤْمِنِينَ. When a Prophet sees one person as not being believer, the Prophet cannot sleep at night. You know, the Prophet, one of his qualities is always concerned about us. Not just in this world, even Yawm al-Qiyamah. Some of the narrations say, Yawm al-Qiyamah, when every human being say, Nafsi, 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 thinking about themselves, Rasulullah is the only man we will hear saying, Ashabi, Ashabi, Ashabi. When everybody is talking about me, think my companions, my ummah, my ummah. And that's why Quran is talking about him. It says, Harisun alaykum, is ma anittum, is always concerned about you, about us. He doesn't want even one person to go in the wrong direction. That is how much he's concerned about us. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Bil mu'minina ra'ufun rahim. The Prophet is all compassionate. With whom? With all mankind. You want to see his compassion? Now go back to the history and see Rasulullah. What did he go through? And what did he do to make sure that all mankind have peace and have guidance? Rasulullah sallallahu is the man that forgives even for his enemies. You go back to the history. The people who let the Prophet left Mecca. And you know the Prophet, he loves Mecca so much. Because that was his city, that's where he was born. And the narration said the night that the Prophet was doing hijrah, when he left his house and he looked, he stood there and he said to Allah, Allahumma anta ta'lam. Oh Allah, you know I love this city. Allah, I'm leaving this city. Take me to a city that you love, Ya Allah. I know Mecca is the city that I love, but I want now to send me to a city you love, Ya Rabbal Alamin. Then Allah told him, Ya Rasulullah, alayka bil Medina. Go to Medina. And he moved to Medina. But this Mecca that the Prophet loved, he was forced to leave Mecca. He was forced to leave Mecca against his will. And he went there and he walked from Mecca to Medina. His legs was all cracked up and bleeding, but the Prophet went all the way to Mecca. Now later on, the same Prophet come back to Mecca, and the people who caused all this to him, now the Prophet catches them. And he looks at them and he asks them, "Ma tadhunnuna anni sani'un bikum?" What do you think I will do to you? And they themselves, they said to the Prophet, "Ya Muhammad, anta kareem ibnul kareem." You are generous and son of generous. We are at your mercy. And then the Prophet will say to them, "Idhabu fa antum talaqun." Go, you are free. Where do you find a leader like Rasul? The same Prophet, to know how much he is concerned about people. When he went to Ta'if, he wanted to bring them the guidance and light and show them the teaching of Quran. But the people in return, they received the Prophet with stones. The Prophet was covered with blood. Jibreel comes down. The Prophet was weak. He sat next to a tree and he was doing dhikr. Jibreel comes, "Ya Rasulullah, what do you want me to do to those people who hurt you?" Then the Prophet will turn, see how concerned he is. Even in this situation, then he said, Jibreel, "Ya Rabbi ihdil qawm fa innahum la ya'lam." Ya Allah, not only don't punish them, I'm making dua for them, people who hurt him. That is one of the akhlaq. The Prophet was telling Jibreel, Allahumma ihdil qawm fa innahum la ya'lamun. That is akhlaq of the Prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, bil mu'minina ra'ufun rahim. He is so compassionate and also rahim, merciful. Now when you go to the Arabic language, they say the word rahim and ra'uf, they have the same meaning if they are separated. But if they come along to each other, then they have different meanings. In Arabic, when you say ra'uf, literally in Arabic it means merciful. Ar-Rahim, merciful. But if they come next to each other, as it's mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Tawbah, then they have slight difference. What is it? They say if they are gathered together or united in the same sentence, then it means Ar-Ra'uf to those who listen and obey him, and Rahim to even those who disobey him. That is the Prophet. Compassionate for those who obey him. Compassionate with those who doesn't even obey. Those who even rejected him, is still compassionate towards them. That is Rasulullah. You go into the history tells us some of the examples. The Prophet was sitting, and a man came behind, and the Prophet was just by himself with his sword. And he said to the Prophet, Ya Muhammad, man ladhi yunjika minni? Who is he who can save you from me right now? And there was nobody except him and Rasulullah. Then the Prophet says, Rabbi. You ask me who's going to save me? He said, my Lord can save me. Then he took the sword, about to hit the Prophet. And Jibreel came to intervene, took the sword away, and dropped it right in front of the Prophet. The Prophet picked the sword. Now between you and Allah. If a person comes with gun, because we can understand with the gun today, right? If a person comes with the gun, right, and try to shoot at you, right? And alhamdulillah, for some miracle, he missed the shot, right? And then you grab the gun, right? Now what would you do? Huh? Not just between you and Allah. Just in practical life, what would you do? Huh? You're going to say, okay, I'm going to give you the gun back, right? Nobody does that, right? Rasulullah, when he took the gun, he asked the man the same question. Ya rajul, man ladhi yunjika minni? Now I am in your shoe, right? Now you tell me, who will save you? So you listen to the enemy. Then he looks at the Prophet. He says, Ya Muhammad rahmatuk. The only thing that can save me is your mercy. Then the Prophet looks at him and he said, this is your gun. You are at my mercy, you can go. That is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are people who think about the Prophet is always about sword and fighting and killing. Wallah, they didn't know the life of this Prophet. They didn't read about which this man was. That is the Prophet. That is when the Quran says about Ra'ufun Rahim. Rahim, merciful even to his enemies.
بحرمت محمد مصطفى احمد مجتبى صلاة.
Now, some of the messages, brothers and sisters, that we can take home from the Prophet. One of the things that the Prophet has emphasized so much for us to learn and take it at home is that one, the Prophet was so kind to his neighbors. Neighbors was one of the things the Prophet never pleased with. And Imam Ali tells us about how the Prophet emphasized on neighbors. He says, مَا زَالَ يُوصِينَا بِالْجَارِ حَتَّى ظَنَنَّا أَنَّهُ سَيُوَرِّثُهُ. The Prophet always emphasized on neighbor, on neighbor, on neighbor, till we even thought he will make them to inherit, part of the inheritance. But he never did. But he always emphasized about what? About the neighbors. Imam Zayn al-Abidin talks about the neighbors also. Imam Ali talks about, Imam Zayn al-Abidin talks about the neighbors. He says, لَيْسَ حُسْنُ الْجُوَارِ كَفُّ الْعَذَى. He said, being a good neighbor is not to say, I never hurt my neighbors. That doesn't make you a good neighbor. What makes you a good neighbor? It says, وَإِنَّمَا, what makes you a good neighbor, الصَّبْرُ عَلَى الْعَذَى. to be patient when your neighbor is hurting you. That makes you a good neighbor. That is one of the message. And I mentioned this from Sayyid Sistani as well, because one of his messages is we have to show the beauty of Islam today more than ever before. Akhlaq is one of the most needed today in our life. And we can start it from our neighbors. That is one of the messages of the Prophet, showing a good character of Islam to our neighbors. That is number one. Number two, one of the akhlaq of the Prophet. The Prophet always, he was the first person to greet any person he meets. No person ever met the Prophet and he was able to say salam to the Prophet before the Prophet said salam. That was one of his akhlaq. Always when he sees someone, he will be the first one to smile and say salam to the person. That is one of the akhlaq of the Prophet. We should adopt that. Be the ones, because as a followers of the Prophet, always we shouldn't wait others to say salam to us or say hi to us. Our neighbors at the workplace, let it be your akhlaq in the following steps of the Prophet. And by the way, you know, not just is the akhlaq, even the thawab. They said there is 100 reward for salam, just the greetings. But 90 of that reward is the first person to start the salam. And the 10 is for the one who responds. So if not because of anything, at least for the sake of 90 reward that I get from Allah, let's adopt the akhlaq of salam and being the one to start the greatest. That was the akhlaq of the Prophet. That is number two. Number three, one of the akhlaq of the Prophet that is very known to the Prophet is that the Prophet always brings people together. When you look at the life of the people before Islam, they were all scattered. They used to have different tribes and they were fighting among themselves. But the Prophet brought them together. And Quran mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, it says, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. The Prophet was the one who makes people brothers. The Prophet, that is one of his character, bringing people together. When you see two people are fighting, he will never leave until he reconciles between them. When he sees the people are fighting, husband and wife, he will make sure that he reconciles. He would not leave until this month. That was one of his akhlaq, bringing people together. That is one of the akhlaq we should adopt. And Imam Ali also mentioned this in one of his saying. He said, "Inna islah ذات البين أفضل من عامة الصلاة والصيام." Reconciling between people is better than the nawafil. Which means, example, if I have two choices, one is to reconcile between two people, one is to go and do nawafil. Imam Ali say reconciling between people is better than to go and do the nawafil salah or fasting. And Rasulullah used to do that. That is akhlaq we need to adopt. At every place we go, let us be one of those ambassadors of Rasulullah. Let us adopt the akhlaq that the Prophet adopted, because this is the things that make the Prophet Rasulullah. This akhlaq is what made him different. And that is what even before Islam he was called Sadiqul Ameen. This akhlaq is very important. That is number three. Number four, one of the akhlaq of the Prophet that the Prophet was known is to always keep his words. Never breaks his promise. The Prophet never, at any point, he promised someone and he breaks the promise. That is impossible. And even in the Quran, Allah makes this to be one of the sign of believers. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ in Surah Al-Mu'minun لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. They always observe their words. And they start between husband and wife. When I promise my wife, I have to fulfill. When a wife promises husband, you have to fulfill. I promise my children, I have to fulfill. It's very important. The Prophet, one of the example he said, as always is man of his word. And you can see when the Prophet one day, when he promises a non-believer, that they should meet under a tree. The Prophet came there with his companions. Before the time, he was waiting. The man didn't show up. The sun was now appear on the Prophet. Companions told me, Ya Rasulullah, can we go this? He said, no, I'm going to stay here because the promise was here. That is one of the messages of the Prophet. That's what made him Rasulullah. That's what made him a different person among those people. Keeping the promise is one of them. And when you go to Hadith of Ahlul Bayt, they mention about the importance of keeping promises. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he says, Wallahi law ammanani qatilu abi bisayf alladhi ammanani alayh qatala bihi abi, he said, la ammantu alayh. One hadith said 3 things Allah never gave any discount in them, meaning the Islam takes it very serious. One of them is keeping the words, keeping the promise. The Prophet was like that. So that is one of the akhlaq we have to adapt from the Prophet. And the last one that I will mention, brothers, that Rasulullah was known is to always, the Prophet was known to be smiling. And he mentioned, the Prophet mentioned, that smiling in the face of another person is like sadaqah in the sight of Allah. You know, this smile of yours can change the life of a person. Just a smile you put on somebody's face. The Prophet ﷺ does at-tabassum fi wajhi akhika sadaqa. And he mentioned one of the hadiths, al-mu'min hashun basam. The mu'min, the believer, is always when you see others smile. That is one of the message. Don't let to be seen that this person is always angry. No, that is your face be. A face of people, when they see you, they see a smile on your face. The Prophet was known to be always, when he see people, he always loving, nice. And he always present himself nice. That is one of the teachings of the Prophet. If we can adopt these teachings of the Prophet, trust me, we can make a big difference. You know, sometimes, brothers, if you put a smile on the face of a person, and this have happened so many cases, a person is having a bad day, you put a smile on their face, you make their whole day. Just one smile can make a big difference on somebody's life. Somebody is sick, they are in the hospital, they're looking for somebody to come and visit them. At the moment you walk in, they see you, they smile. You have made their day. That itself is a big message, it's a big ibadah in Islam. And that is one of the teachings of the Prophet. That if we are to adopt this, we can make this world to be a better place. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be the true followers of this great man, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, not only to be followers by words, no, let us be the followers by action, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Let us listen to the teaching of the Prophet and help us to be the ones who practice his teachings, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Allah, we ask you, unite us with the Prophet, Ya Rabbal Alameen, Yawm al-Qiyamah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And Ya Allah, grant us the shafa of the Prophet on the day of judgment, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.